It's fair to say 2024 hasn't been a great year for gaming when it comes to keeping services running. The Xbox 360 store got killed off, Ubisoft deleted the game The Crew for want of a better word, Sony released and then killed off Concord in the space of 2 weeks, and finally Ubisoft have just put the boot in on X-Defiant last night. Delisting and online service closures are a monthly thing right now. That's on top of the fact this has been one of the worst years on record for industry job losses, with over 1,400 jobs in the industry gone so far this year. Microsoft are keeping the Xbox service closures up, having decided to kill off the newer avatar system on January the 9th, 2025. I'm not aware of any game that used it, and the newer avatar system was a bit rubbish, but the older Xbox 360 avatar system will remain up, as that was an offline software program, and even if they could turn that one off, it would break a lot of games. As always, the excellent website Delisted Games has been keeping track of all of them. However, this month there are a number of delistings I want to highlight. First off, G.I. Joe Operation Blackout will be delisted on December the 1st, 2024 on PC, PlayStation, Xbox and Switch. Based on the 80s cartoon version of the G.I. Joe characters, it's a cel-shaded third-person action game, or to put it bluntly, a Gears of War clone. While the game does nothing original, it's a decent attempt at the genre with 2-player support. It could do with a bit more polish in places, but compared to recent games like Star Wars Outlaws, it's not a buggy mess. G.I. Joe Operation Blackout did get a retail release, but there are some film skin DLC, and the deluxe digital version includes some weapons and costume skins not found in any other version. The digital versions have been on sale recently, and I suspect they will be put on sale again before it gets delisted. Even the retail version is very common and seems to cost £15 or less from most sellers at present here in the United Kingdom. Its removal is most likely due to the licensing expiring and the fact a new G.I. Joe game has been released called G.I. Joe Wrath of Cobra, which, I have to be honest, looks like a rather poor quality and soulless Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge clone, and looks like it was done seriously on the cheap. Whereas G.I. Joe Operation Blackout is a half decent game, but don't pay more than say about £15 for it. It's not a hugely long game, but you get to pick your characters and swap between the two sides as the story plays out. The bigger news is Sega are up to their old tricks again and delisting a large number of their retro releases, and the last day to buy them will be December the 6th at 11:59 PST time. I'm guessing each region's storefront will pull them at the stroke of midnight, but I could be wrong. Sega have only given a few weeks notice on this one, and that means at the end of this week on Friday night these games get pulled from sale for good. The official post on Sega's website isn't even that clear about what's going to be delisted. The big one is the SEGA Mega Drive / Genesis Classics Collection on all formats. On PC this means all the games sold individually will be removed. It does have a retail release, which is good news, but along with the collection, many other digital-only Xbox 360 back catalogue titles are also getting pulled. This includes all the remaining Sega Vintage collections and most of the Model 2 arcade games. However, not all the back catalogue titles you'd expect to be delisted are mentioned in this list, so the list is as follows. The SEGA Mega Drive Classics or SEGA Genesis Classics on console and single titles on PC. The remaining titles are all Xbox 360 titles available to buy on Xbox One and Series. Altered Beast, Crazy Taxi, Sega Vintage Collection Golden Axe, Sega Vintage Collection Monster World, Nights into Dream, Sega Bass Fishing, Shinobi, Sonic the Fighters, Sega Vintage Collection Streets of Rage, Sega Vintage Collection Toe Jam and Earl, and lastly Virtua Fighter 2. Most of the Sega Vintage collections aren't mentioned by full name on the list, but based on the information there I'm assuming it's them. So this is a fairly major blow to Sega Retro fans. If you haven't yet bought it, here is a rundown of the games in the Sega Mega Drive Classics Collection, or Sega Genesis, depending where you live. Note, a couple are PC only titles and a few have since been removed or weren't in certain versions. Here's the full format list. Alex Kidd in the Enchanted Castle, Alien Soldier, Alien Storm, Altered Beast, Beyond Oasis or Story of 4, Biohazard Battle, Bonanza Bros, Columns, Columns 3, Comic Zone, Crackdown, Decap Attack, Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine, Dynamite Heady, Echo the Dolphin, Echo the Tides of Time, Echo Junior, eSwap City Under Siege, Eternal Champions, Fatal Labyrinth, Flicky, Game Ground, Galaxy Force 2, Golden Axe, Golden Axe 2, Golden Axe 3, Gunstar Heroes, Kid Chameleon, Land Stalker, Light Crusader, Phantasy Star 2, Phantasy Star 3, Generations of Doom, Phantasy Star 4, The End of the Millennium, The Revenge of Shinobi, Rise Star, Shadow Dancer, Shining Force, Shining Force 2, Shining in the Darkness, Shinobi 3, Return of the Ninja Master, Sonic 3D Blast, Sonic Spinball, Sonic the Hedgehog, Sonic the Hedgehog 2, Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Knuckles, Space Harrier 2, Streets of Rage, Streets of Rage 2, Streets of Rage 3, Super Thunderblade, Sword of Vermilion, Toe Jam and Earl, Toe Jam and Earl in Panic on Funkatron, Vectorman, Vectorman 2, Virtua Fighter 2, Wonder Boy 3 Monster Lair, Wonder Boy in Monster World. Just to provide some further information, both Wonder Boy games are missing from the Nintendo Switch version. Sonic the Hedgehog 1, 2 and 3 have since been delisted. Sonic 3 and Knuckles was also not included on the console versions, likely due to the music license. Echo the Dolphin, Echo the Tides of Time, Echo Junior and Eternal Champions are only on PC. They aren't on console for some reason, and Echo 1 and 2 were last on the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 Mega Drive collection. Echo the Dolphin also had a now delisted single release on Xbox 360, while Echo Junior at retail last appeared on the PlayStation 2 and PlayStation Portable collection back in 2006. SEGA Mega Drive Classics has a great selection of games. A number of titles also include the Japanese version like Streets of Rage 3. Emulation is okay, there is some lag and the sound wasn't perfect. That said, even the M2 collections got the sound wrong as well. This is your last chance to buy them in their current form on digital services. I should point out that the Sonic ports on Sonic Origin collection changed the look of the Sonic 2 bonus stages, which were a technical marvel on the original hardware, and altered how Sonic 1 and 2 handled and played, making the SEGA Mega Drive Genesis Classics Collection the last way to play the original raw Mega Drive versions. Do keep in mind the console version of this collection does have a retail release. On Xbox, we also have many of the back catalogue titles from the Dreamcast and arcade ranges being axed. A number of these games have PlayStation 3 versions, but it isn't clear if the PlayStation 3 versions are getting pulled as well. Now, in the Model 2 arcade range, Sonic the Fighters and Virtua Fighter 2 are getting pulled. Sega don't mention if Fighting Vipers is getting yanked as well, and I don't know the fate of the two Japanese-only releases Virtua On and Virtua Striker. I will note that Virtua Fighter 2, Fighting Vipers, Cyber Troopers Virtual On, Sonic the Fighters and Sega Bass Fishing do all feature in the various Yakuza, Like a Dragon and Judgment games. The website Time Extension has a good breakdown on which games in the Yakuza series and its spin-offs you can find the various arcade titles. Still, it's not an ideal way to play retro games playing them within another game. I'll link to that feature in the video description. While the Sega post isn't that clear, it appears all the remaining Sega Vintage collections are also being removed on Xbox 360. One point to note, Sega don't own the rights to Toe Jam and Earl and have to sub-license it. Both games appear in the Vintage and Mega Drive collection. That said, the second game in the series recently got added to the Nintendo Switch Online service, but the Vintage collection has some great extras not found anywhere else. The Golden Axe Vintage Collection is the only one available to feature the arcade version to buy anymore, and the emulation in it and extras are far better than the original XBLA standalone version. While the Mega Drive Genesis version is in the Mega Drive Collection. The extras on the Streets and Rage and Monster World Vintage Collection are better than those found on the newer releases. However, the newer Wonder Boy Anniversary Collection includes all the games in the series and most revisions. The vintage version only featured Wonder Boy in Monsterland on the arcade, and the Mega Drive games Wonder Boy 5, Monster World 3, just called Wonder Boy and Monster World in English, and Monster World 4. SEGA have already pulled the excellent M2 Sega Rage's arcade port of Shinobi on Nintendo Switch, so this is your last chance to grab the game on any format, but this Digital Eclipse version doesn't have the best emulation going. Same goes with Altered Beast, the sound emulation is pretty bad, but it's the superior arcade version and not the awful Mega Drive version seen on many of the collections. Altered Beast was never a great game, and it baffles me why so many great Sega games haven't had a reissue, yet Altered Beast gets so many. Dreamcast releases Crazy Taxi and Sega Bass Fishing are also getting pulled. Some reports said Sonic Adventure DX and 2 were also going in some regions, but I can't confirm this. Crazy Taxi and Sega Bass Fishing are featured on the Dreamcast Collection retail disc for the Xbox 360, however. Finally, and for me, this is the biggest loss. The Xbox 360 HD port of the PlayStation 2 version of Nights into the Dream is getting pulled. Nights is a wonderful game, first released on Sega Saturn, that I highly recommend everyone plays. Summed up, it's a beautiful, colourful game with a wonderful soundtrack that has you flying through the skies and taking on nightmares to overcome the fears of the main characters Elliot and Clarice, so they can fulfil their dreams and save Nightopia. I'll be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if some other older Sega retro games not on this list also appear come the end of Friday. As always, be aware of the fact that scalpers will try to raise the price on some online sites for the retail versions after they get delisted, but both games were heavily printed, it seems. There's a lot of guesswork as to why this content is being delisted. Maybe Sega have new retro collections in the works. However, the fear of many is that we may see a new subscription service for their retro games, and I for one won't be paying for that. It's bad enough with the awful Nintendo Online service, but that is here to stay for now, as Sega are putting more and more of their titles on it. I also feel that the subscription model has run its course, as there are just too many now, as live service games are starting to find out. Will 2025 be any better? I can't say, but the outlook right now isn't looking great, I will admit. And on that rather sad note, I will end this video. Thanks for watching. As always, I have been your host, Random Gamer Riven. As always, if you enjoyed watching this video or found it useful, please do leave us a like and consider subscribing to the channel. Please do visit our blog and Twitch channel for more gaming content. Oh, and you can support us on Ko-fi. Finally, have a good morning, afternoon, evening or night wherever you are in the world today.